A 7-year-old girl walked up to the most dangerous man in the neighborhood and offered him $5 to save her mother's life. What happened next would destroy an entire criminal empire and prove that sometimes the bravest people are the smallest. Welcome back to the channel, where we tell powerful stories of courage born in the darkest moments. This is the story of Luna Alvarez, a child who stood alone for 3 days, and a decision that would bring an entire criminal empire to its knees. Luna Alvarez had been alone for 3 days. 72 hours of silence in an apartment that used to smell like her mother's cooking but now just smelled like fear and old pizza boxes. The kind of alone that makes shadows feel like monsters and every creak sound like footsteps. Her mother, Isabella, had been taken on Tuesday afternoon. Luna remembered because she'd been coloring a picture of a butterfly when the door exploded inward and 3 men with guns dragged her mother out while screaming about money her dead father supposedly owed. "You have 48 hours," one of them had snarled at Isabella. 50,000 or you disappear. Permanently. Luna had hidden in the closet, watching through the slats as they shoved her mother into a van. Watched her mother's terrified eyes scanning the apartment, probably looking for her daughter, probably praying Luna had stayed hidden. The door slammed. The van drove away. Silence. For 3 days, Luna survived on cereal and tap water. She didn't go to school. How could she explain that mommy was gone but not dead, taken but not by police, and that calling 911 felt more dangerous than staying quiet? Her mother had always warned her, "Never trust the police in this neighborhood, Mija. They're bought and paid for by the same people who hurt us." So Luna made a plan. A terrible, desperate, 7-year-old's plan. She'd heard the neighborhood women whispering about Dominic Russo, the name they said in hushed tones. The man who controlled everything from the docks to the restaurants, from the protection rackets to the underground poker games. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Shop owners paid him monthly insurance. Even the corrupt cops gave him space. "He's a monster," one woman had said. "But he's fair," another had replied. "He doesn't hurt kids. Doesn't touch women who aren't in the game. Has rules." Rules. That word stuck with Luna like gum on a shoe. If monsters could have rules, maybe they could be reasoned with. Luna emptied her piggy bank onto her bed. 5 crumpled dollar bills. Everything she owned. Birthday money from her grandmother who died last year. Allowance she'd saved for the American Girl doll she wanted. $5 to buy her mother's life. She found Dominic Russo outside his restaurant at 6 p.m. on Friday evening, exactly where the neighborhood gossip said he'd be. Tall, dark suit that probably cost more than Luna's entire apartment, surrounded by men who looked like they broke bones for a living. Luna's hands shook as she approached. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every instinct screamed to run, but Mommy's face in the van kept pushing her forward. The bodyguards noticed her first. Hands moved toward concealed weapons. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Dominic turned, his eyes, cold and calculating, landing on the small girl in the dirty blue shirt and mismatched shoes standing 5 feet away with tears streaming down her face. "Please," Luna's voice cracked. "I need to hire you." One of the bodyguards laughed. Another looked uncomfortable. But Dominic held up a hand, silencing them all. He knelt down to her level. Up close, his face was all sharp angles and old scars, the kind earned through violence rather than accidents. His eyes were the darkest brown she'd ever seen, almost black, like looking into a well with no bottom. "Hire me." His voice was surprisingly gentle. "For what, little one?" Luna held out her $5, the bills shaking in her small fist. "To save my mom. Bad men took her. They want $50,000 but we don't have it and Daddy's dead and I don't know who else to ask and everyone says you're the scariest person here so maybe you can scare them into giving her back." The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and childish and heartbreaking. Dominic stared at the money, at this child offering him everything she had for something that should have been free, something that should have been guaranteed, something that never should have been taken in the first place. "What's your name?" "Luna. Luna Alvarez." Recognition flickered across his face. Roberto Alvarez's daughter. She nodded, not understanding what that meant but hoping it was good. Dominic took the $5 with the kind of care most people reserved for priceless artifacts, folded them precisely, tucked them into his inner jacket pocket like they mattered. "Tell me everything," he said quietly, "and don't leave anything out." Luna told him about Tuesday, about the men with guns and the van without license plates, about her mother's screams and the words 50,000, and how nobody had called or come back and she'd been eating cereal for 3 days because she was too scared to leave the apartment for long. Dominic listened without interrupting. His face remained neutral, but something cold and dangerous settled behind his eyes, the look of a predator identifying prey. "These men," he said when she finished. "What did they look like?" "One had a scar here." Luna traced a line down her cheek. "Another was really fat and smelled like cigarettes. The third one had tattoos on his neck. Like snakes or something." Dominic's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who she was describing. How long ago did they take her? 3 days. They said 48 hours, but that was... Luna's face scrunched up as she tried to do math. That was yesterday. So they probably already... Don't finish that sentence. Dominic's hand landed gently on her shoulder. "Where do you live?" "Apartment 4C. The building with the broken steps. 2 blocks that way." "And you've been alone this whole time?" Luna nodded, trying desperately not to cry harder. "Big girls don't cry. Mommy always said big girls are brave." But Luna was so tired of being brave. Dominic stood, barked orders to his men in Italian. 3 of them immediately headed toward black SUVs parked at the curb. Another pulled out a phone, already dialing. "Marco," Dominic said to the largest bodyguard. "Take Luna to the restaurant. Get her food. Real food, not the trash she's been eating. Stay with her until I get back." "Boss, you sure about this? Getting involved in... Did I ask for your opinion?" Marco shut up immediately. Dominic crouched back down to Luna's level. "Listen carefully. You're going to go inside with Marco. He looks scary, but he's harmless unless I tell him not to be. You're going to eat dinner. Then you're going to stay there until I come back. Do you understand? Are you going to find my mom?" "Yes. Promise." Something flickered across Dominic's face. "Pain, maybe. Or memory. I promise. But Luna, the world you just walked into by asking for my help, it's not pretty. Things might happen that you don't understand. Your mother might have seen things. Been through things. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Luna didn't. Not really. But she nodded anyway because agreeing with the scary Mafia man seemed like the smart play. "Good girl." Dominic stood. "Marco, anything happens to her, you'll wish the people who took her mother had found you instead." Marco nodded solemnly, understanding the threat was absolutely real. As Luna followed the massive bodyguard into the warm restaurant that smelled like garlic and bread, she looked back once. Dominic was already on his phone, his face transformed into something that would give grown men nightmares. Inside, Marco sat her at a corner booth and waved over a waitress. "Anything she wants. Keep it coming. Bill it to Dominic." The waitress, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, looked at Luna with concern and recognition. The concern of someone who understood that children don't show up at Mafia restaurants crying with $5 unless something terrible has happened. "What would you like, sweetheart?" Luna hadn't eaten real food in 3 days. Her stomach hurt. Everything hurt. Spaghetti and orange juice. Coming right up. While Luna ate, slowly at first, then with the desperation of someone who's been living on dry cereal, Dominic was already tearing through the city's underworld like a hurricane with a personal vendetta. The description Luna had given him was enough. Scarface, fat cigarette smoker, neck tattoos. He knew exactly who they were. The Kozlov crew, Russian Bratva operating out of the warehouse district, specializing in kidnapping, extortion, and human trafficking. They'd been pushing into his territory for months, testing boundaries, seeing how much they could take before Dominic pushed back. They'd just crossed the line he'd drawn in blood 15 years ago. The line that said children were off limits. Families were off limits. Innocents were off limits. Roberto Alvarez had been a low-level dealer who worked the edges of Dominic's territory. Small-time. Harmless. He died in a car accident 6 months ago. Brake line failure that was ruled mechanical but probably wasn't. Insurance paid nothing. Left behind a wife and daughter with no safety net. The Kozlovs were notorious for fabricating debts. They'd claim someone owed them money, kidnap a family member, extort whatever they could squeeze out, then either kill the victim or sell them to trafficking networks operating in Eastern Europe. 50,000 was probably made up. Even if Roberto had owed them money, which Dominic doubted, the man had been too small-time to accumulate that kind of debt. This was just business to them. Cruel, efficient, profitable business. Dominic made 4 phone calls in the car. By the time he reached his real office, not the restaurant front, but the warehouse headquarters where actual operations ran, he had intelligence from 6 different sources. Isabella Alvarez was being held in a shipping container near Pier 19. She wasn't alone. 4 other women were there too, all scheduled for transport to Albania in 36 hours. The Kozlov crew thought they were untouchable because they'd been paying off cops and had connections to Russian mob families back east. They were wrong. What would you do if a desperate child showed up at your door? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Dominic assembled his team in the warehouse's back room. 10 men, all veterans of the kind of violence that never made the news. Each one had been with him for years. Each one understood the rules. "We're hitting the Kozlovs tonight," Dominic said, spreading a map of the pier across the table. "They have 5 women in a container at Pier 19. One of them is Isabella Alvarez. We're extracting all of them and sending a message that even these Russian idiots can understand." Boss, one of his lieutenants, a man named Sal with a Brooklyn accent thick as concrete, spoke up. "The Kozlovs have been itching for war. We do this, we're giving them what they want." "No." Dominic's voice dropped to something sub-zero. "We're not giving them war. We're giving them annihilation. I want every person in that operation dead or wishing they were. I want their supply lines burned. I want their connections severed. I want their organization to cease existing by sunrise." The room went silent. This wasn't business. This was personal. "Why?" another man asked. "What's Isabella Alvarez to us?" "She's the mother of a 7-year-old who's been eating cereal alone for 3 days because she was too scared to ask anyone for help. A 7-year-old who offered me $5, everything she had, to save her mother." Dominic pulled Luna's crumpled bills from his pocket, set them on the table. "This is what we're fighting for. Not territory. Not money. For the kids who think monsters are their only option." Understanding rippled through the room. Every man there knew Dominic's history. Knew why he'd built his empire on specific rules. Knew what lines he'd never cross and what happened to people who did. 3 teams, Dominic continued. Team 1 hits the container. Team 2 secures the perimeter. Team 3 tracks down every Kozlov operator we know about and makes sure they understand this was their last mistake. Questions? Rules of engagement? Sal asked. There are none. Anyone associated with trafficking gets no mercy. Anyone who runs, let them, we'll find them later. Anyone who fights, end them. Dominic checked his watch. We move in 2 hours. Get ready. As the team dispersed to prepare weapons and vehicles, Dominic made one more call. To a doctor he kept on retainer. Not the kind who worked in hospitals with ethics boards and mandatory reporting. The kind who asked no questions and treated bullet wounds at 2 a.m. I need you ready tonight. Multiple victims. Trauma, possibly sexual assault, definitely psychological damage. Women who've been held captive. I'm bringing them to the warehouse. How many? 5. Maybe more if we find additional containers. I'll need supplies. Sedatives, antibiotics, trauma kit. Get whatever you need. Bill me. Be there in 90 minutes. Dominic hung up and stared at Luna's $5 still sitting on the table. Such a small amount. Such an enormous weight. He'd been 12 when his sister disappeared. 14-year-old Maria, beautiful and innocent, snatched off the street while walking home from school. The police did nothing. His father did nothing. The neighborhood did nothing because everyone was too scared of the men who controlled the streets back then. They found Maria's body 3 months later in a dumpster behind a warehouse. Used up and discarded like trash. 13 other girls were found in that same dumpster over the next year. The men responsible were never caught. Never prosecuted. Never even questioned officially because they had connections, money, and cops on their payroll. That was when Dominic stopped believing in justice and started believing in power. When he decided that if the system wouldn't protect people, he'd build his own system that would. It took him 20 years to build the empire he controlled now. 20 years of violence and strategy and ruthless elimination of anyone who stood in his way. But he'd built it with rules. Lines he'd never cross. Children were sacred. Families were off limits. Trafficking was a death sentence for anyone stupid enough to try it in his territory. The Kozlovs had just signed their own death warrants. Dominic returned to the restaurant where Luna had fallen asleep in the booth, her head resting on Marco's massive forearm. The big man looked uncomfortable but protective, like a grizzly bear accidentally adopted by a kitten. She ate 2 plates of spaghetti, Marco whispered. Drank 3 orange juices. Asked if her mom likes spaghetti too. What did you tell her? That her mom's gonna love whatever we serve when she gets back. Marco's expression darkened. We are getting her back, right boss? By midnight. Dominic looked at Luna's sleeping face. Tear-stained. Exhausted. Still clutching a napkin she'd folded into some kind of origami flower. Stay with her. I'll be back in a few hours. You going to war over a $5 job? Dominic headed for the door. I'm going to war over what that $5 represents. There's a difference. Pier 19 at 11 p.m. was exactly what you'd expect from a place where illegal cargo moved through the shadows. Shipping containers stacked like rusty Legos, shadows thick enough to hide an army, the smell of salt water and diesel fuel hanging heavy in the air. Dominic's team moved like ghosts. Silent. Efficient. Practiced at violence in the way surgeons were practiced at healing. The Kozlov operation had 6 guards visible. Probably more inside the warehouse office. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures in 3 locations. the office, a container on the south end, and a van parked near the access gate. "Container first," Dominic ordered through the team's encrypted radio. "We get the women out before we light this place up." Team 1, 4 men including Dominic, approached from the waterside, using containers as cover. The guards were lazy, confident in their employer's reputation, smoking cigarettes and checking phones instead of actually watching their perimeter. Mistake. The first guard died without knowing he was in danger. Suppressed gunshot to the back of the head. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The second guard turned at the sound of his friend falling. Got halfway through raising his weapon before Dominic's blade opened his throat. Arterial spray painted the container red. Too easy. These weren't soldiers. They were thugs playing at being dangerous. The container doors were padlocked. Dominic didn't bother with subtlety, just shot the lock off with his suppressed pistol and wrenched the doors open. The smell hit him first. Unwashed bodies, fierce sweat, and the sharp tang of urine. 5 women cowered in the darkness, shielding their eyes from the sudden influx of light. Isabella Alvarez? Dominic kept his voice low, non-threatening. One woman, mid-30s, brown hair matted with dirt, eyes wild with terror, raised a shaking hand. "Please don't hurt us anymore. We'll do whatever you want. Please." "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because your daughter hired me." Dominic stepped into the container, hands visible and empty. "Luna's safe. She's eating spaghetti and waiting for you. But I need you all to stay quiet and follow my men. We're getting you out of here." Isabella's face crumpled. "Luna? She's okay?" "Oh God, I told her to hide, I thought." "She's fine. Scared but fine." "Can you walk?" "Yes. Yes, I can walk." The other 4 women were in worse shape. One had clearly been beaten. Another seemed catatonic, staring at nothing. The third and fourth were younger, maybe late teens, and looked like they'd been crying for days. Dominic's radio crackled. "Boss, we got movement. Looks like reinforcements incoming. 3 vehicles, maybe 15 hostiles." Perfect timing. The Kozlovs had realized something was wrong. "Get the women to the extraction point," Dominic ordered. "Team 2, you're up. Make them regret showing up." What happened next was the kind of violence that Dominic had spent 20 years perfecting. His team wasn't just good, they were artists painting in gunpowder and blood. The Kozlov reinforcements rolled in thinking they had the advantage. Numbers, weapons, home territory. They were wrong on all counts. Dominic's second team had set up a kill box. Overlapping fields of fire, elevated positions, nowhere to run. When the first Kozlov vehicle passed the warehouse corner, all hell broke loose. Gunfire tore through sheet metal. Tires exploded. Men screamed. Return fire went wild, hitting nothing but containers and darkness. 45 seconds. That's how long it took to reduce 15 men into casualties. Dominic didn't waste time checking bodies. He moved toward the warehouse office where thermal imaging showed 4 more heat signatures. These would be the leadership. The ones who'd ordered Isabella's kidnapping. The ones who'd built their empire on trafficking and extortion. He kicked the door open. Found 3 men scrambling for weapons and one, the fat one Luna had described, cigarette dangling from his lips, trying to climb out the back window. "Going somewhere?" Dominic shot him in the calf. The man screamed, tumbled back into the office, clutching his bleeding leg. The other 3 raised their hands. Survival instinct overriding pride. Dominic Russo, the one with the neck tattoos, said, "Look, we didn't know the woman was under my protection." Dominic interrupted. "You're right. You didn't know. But you should have asked whose territory you were operating in before you started kidnapping mothers and leaving 7-year-olds alone to starve. It was just business, man. Nothing personal. Everything's personal. Dominic shot him in the knee. The man went down howling. You made it personal when you took Isabella Alvarez. You made it personal when you traumatized her daughter. You made it personal when you thought trafficking women through my city was acceptable. The third man, the one with the scar Luna had described, was smarter than his friends. He kept his hands raised, but his eyes tracked every movement Dominic made, looking for an opening. He wouldn't find one. You have 10 seconds to tell me where the rest of your operation is, Dominic said calmly. Locations, contacts, supply routes. Everything. After that, I start removing body parts until you talk anyway. They talked. Fear made people very forthcoming with information. By midnight, Dominic had a complete map of the Kozlov operation in his territory. Names, addresses, bank accounts, contact information for their suppliers and buyers. Everything he needed to burn the entire network to ash. Do you think he can pull off this rescue? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The fat one, whose name was apparently Victor, kept blubbering about how this was all a mistake, how they didn't mean any disrespect, how they'd leave the territory immediately if Dominic just let them live. Dominic stared at him with a kind of cold calculation that made grown men wet themselves. You know what I learned a long time ago? The problem with mercy is that it's interpreted as weakness. You let one cockroach live, suddenly you've got an infestation. He turned to Sal, who joined him in the office. These 3 are coming with us. I want them alive long enough to call every contact they have and tell them the Kozlov operation is done. Then they're going in the harbor. Boss. Victor wheezed. Please, I got kids. You traffic women and you want me to care about your kids? Dominic's gun came up, pressed against Victor's forehead. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to make those calls. You're going to explain that anyone who continues working with your organization dies. You're going to give them my name so they understand this isn't a negotiation. And then you're going to answer for every life you've destroyed. Victor nodded frantically, sweat pouring down his face mixing with blood from where he'd bitten his tongue. The 3 men made their calls under Dominic's supervision. 23 contacts. Suppliers. Buyers. Corrupt officials. Each conversation the same. The Kozlov operation in New York was finished. Dominic Russo had taken over their territory. Anyone who challenged this would share their fate. Word would spread fast. By morning, every criminal organization on the East Coast would know that Dominic had wiped out an entire trafficking ring in one night. Some would be smart enough to respect the boundaries he'd just redefined. Others would test him. He'd deal with them when they showed up. We done? Victor asked when the last call ended. Almost. Dominic nodded to Sal. Take them to the harbor. Make sure they understand what happens to people who hurt children in my city. Sal grinned. It wasn't a pleasant expression. With pleasure, boss. As they dragged the 3 men out, their pleas and promises fading into the night, Dominic surveyed the carnage. 17 dead. The container operation destroyed. 5 women rescued. The entire Kozlov network in shambles. All because a 7-year-old offered him $5. Back at the warehouse, the doctor was already working on the rescued women. Isabella was physically unharmed. The Kozlovs had been keeping her pristine for sale overseas, but traumatized, shaking, alternating between tears and numb silence. The other 4 were in worse shape. Bruises. Signs of assault. One needed stitches. Another needed antibiotics for an infection. All of them needed time and therapy and safety. Dominic watched from the doorway as the doctor worked with professional efficiency. This wasn't the first time he'd patched up trafficking victims. Probably wouldn't be the last. They'll need ongoing care, the doctor said without looking up. Psychiatric evaluation. Safe housing. These women have been through hell. Set it up. I'll cover expenses. All of them. All of them. Dominic's tone left no room for argument. And I want security on each one until we're sure there aren't any Kozlov stragglers looking for revenge. The doctor nodded, understanding this was an order, not a request. Isabella finally noticed Dominic standing there. Her eyes, the same warm brown as Luna's, filled with tears. "You're the man Luna went to." "Yes." "She told you about me?" "She offered me $5 to save your life." Isabella's face crumpled. "Oh God." "She took her piggy bank money. That was for her doll. She's been saving for months. She made a choice. A brave, stupid, impossible choice." Dominic entered the room properly, pulled up a chair. "Your daughter walked up to a Mafia boss and offered him everything she had to save you. Do you understand how rare that kind of courage is? How desperate she must have been. I told her to hide. I told her not to come out no matter what. I thought..." Isabella's voice broke. "I thought if they took me, at least she'd be safe." She wasn't safe. She was alone. Terrified. Eating dry cereal because she was too scared to leave the apartment. Dominic's voice remained neutral, but something hard edged into it. "The men who took you wanted $50,000 for a debt your husband supposedly owed. Did Roberto owe them money?" "No. Roberto was clean. He worked construction. He died when his brakes failed on the highway. It was an accident." "It wasn't an accident. The Kozlovs killed him to fabricate a debt they could collect from you. They've been running this scam for years. Kill the man, wait a few months, then claim the widow owes money. Kidnap, extort, traffic." Isabella's face went white. "They killed Roberto? But the police said..." "The police say what they're paid to say." Dominic leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully. Your husband didn't owe anyone anything. They murdered him to create leverage against you. This wasn't about debt collection. This was about human trafficking. You and the other 4 women were scheduled for transport to Albania tomorrow morning. You would have been sold. Used. Disappeared." The words hung in the air like poison. "But why? We're nobody. Just normal people trying to survive." "That's exactly why. Normal people don't have protection. Don't have connections. Don't have anyone who'll miss them enough to make noise." Dominic pulled Luna's $5 from his pocket. "Except sometimes, normal people raise extraordinary children who refuse to accept that nobody's coming to help." Isabella stared at the crumpled bills. Started crying in earnest. "I want to see her. Please. I need to see my baby. Soon. The doctor needs to finish checking you out. Then I'll take you to her." Dominic stood. "But Isabella? What you've been through tonight, what those women have been through, it doesn't end with the rescue. Trauma is a wound that keeps bleeding. You'll need help. All of you will. I can't afford therapy. You're not paying. I am. Long-term, professional care for as long as you need it. Safe housing until you're ready to go back to your apartment. Security to make sure no stragglers come looking for revenge." He headed for the door, then paused. "Your daughter changed something tonight. She reminded me why I built this empire with rules in the first place. The least I can do is make sure you both have a chance to heal." An hour later, Isabella walked into the restaurant where Luna was still curled up in the booth, now covered with Marco's jacket, sleeping the kind of sleep that comes from pure exhaustion. "Luna." Isabella's voice cracked. Luna's eyes flew open. For a second, she looked confused, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Then reality crashed in and she scrambled out of the booth so fast she nearly tripped over her own feet. "Mommy!" They collided in the middle of the restaurant, both sobbing, both holding on like they might disappear if they let go. Marco turned away, wiping his eyes. Even Sal, who'd just finished drowning 3 men in the harbor, looked affected. Dominic watched from near the kitchen, keeping his distance from the reunion. This moment wasn't about him. Wasn't about his empire or his rules or his war against the Kozlovs. This was about a mother and daughter who shouldn't have been separated in the first place. Who'd survived 3 days of hell because one of them refused to give up and the other raised her to be brave. Luna finally pulled back enough to look at her mother's face. "You're really okay?" "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay because of you." Isabella cupped her daughter's face. "You were so brave. So incredibly brave. But don't you ever do anything like that again, you hear me? No more walking up to dangerous men." "But it worked," Luna protested. "Mr. Russo saved you. Mr. Russo could have been a very different kind of dangerous." Isabella looked over Luna's head at Dominic. "Thank you. I don't have words big enough to." "You don't need words." Dominic approached them, pulled out Luna's $5, and pressed them into the little girl's hand. "You already paid me. But I'm returning this because you paid with something much more valuable. You reminded me why protecting people matters. Why rules exist. Why some lines should never be crossed." Luna looked at the money, then at Dominic. "But this was for saving Mommy. And I did save her. This is change." He smiled, a rare expression that transformed his entire face from terrifying to almost human. "Buy yourself that doll you've been wanting. You earned it. Can I buy 2? So Mommy can have one too?" Something in Dominic's chest cracked. Just a little. Just enough. "Yeah, kid. You can buy 2. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button. It helps us bring you more incredible stories like this. The aftermath of that night rippled outward like a stone thrown into still water. By morning, every criminal organization in New York knew what had happened. The Kozlov operation destroyed. 5 women rescued. 17 bodies left as a message written in blood and burned metal. Dominic Russo had drawn a line and enforced it with a kind of brutal efficiency that made people reconsider their life choices. Some territories operated on greed. Some on violence. Dominic's operated on rules that everyone understood. Cross them, and you cease to exist. But while the criminal underworld absorbed the lesson, there were practical matters to handle. Isabella and Luna needed more than rescue. They needed safety, stability, and time to heal. Dominic arranged it all. First, a new apartment in a better neighborhood. Not luxury, but safe. Clean. In a building where most residents were families with children, where Luna could play outside without seeing drug deals or violence. "I can't afford this," Isabella protested when she saw the lease agreement. "The rent alone is already paid. 2 years up front." Dominic set the keys on the counter. "Non-negotiable. You need stability. Luna needs to feel safe. This provides both." "But I'll owe you." "You owe me nothing. Your daughter already paid in full." His expression softened slightly. "Let me do this, Isabella. Let me prove that not every powerful man uses that power to hurt people." Isabella looked at the apartment. Bright, spacious, with actual working appliances and windows that faced a park instead of an alley. Then she looked at Luna, who was already exploring rooms and claiming the smaller bedroom as hers. "Okay," Isabella whispered. "Thank you." Second, therapy. Dominic connected Isabella with Dr. Sarah Chen, a trauma specialist who worked with victims of trafficking and violent crime. Sessions 3 times a week. Ongoing. Private. "She's expensive," Dr. Chen warned when Dominic called. "Long-term trauma treatment isn't quick or cheap. Money's not an issue. Results are. Can you help her? If she's willing to do the work, yes. But healing from this kind of trauma takes years, not months." Then we have years. Dr. Chen's first session with Isabella was rough. Isabella broke down within 10 minutes, reliving the kidnapping, the container, the terror of not knowing if Luna was safe. But Dr. Chen was patient, experienced, and slowly started building a framework for healing. Luna got therapy too. Child psychologist specializing in trauma. Dr. Marcus Webb, kind-faced and grandfatherly, with an office full of toys and drawing supplies. "She's holding it together remarkably well," Dr. Webb told Isabella after the third session. "But that's often how children survive trauma. They compartmentalize. The real processing happens later, sometimes years later. We need to give her tools now for when those feelings surface." Third, security. 2 of Dominic's men, not the violent enforcers, but the ones who did protective detail, were assigned to watch Isabella and Luna's building. Discreet. Professional. Just present enough to deter anyone stupid enough to come looking. "How long do they stay?" Isabella asked. "Until I'm certain every loose end is tied up. Could be weeks. Could be months." Dominic's tone made it clear this wasn't up for debate. There were 23 contacts in the Kozlov network. Most have gone quiet. A few might be stupid enough to seek revenge. Your security stays until that threat is neutralized. Fourth, employment. Isabella had been working as a housekeeper before the kidnapping. Barely minimum wage. No benefits. No security. Dominic offered her a position managing the administrative side of his legitimate businesses. The restaurants, the import company, the construction firm. Real work. Real salary. Benefits. Stability. "I don't have experience with." You raised a 7-year-old alone after your husband died. You kept food on the table. You survived 3 days of hell and came out ready to rebuild. Dominic slid the employment contract across his desk. "You have exactly the kind of resilience I value in employees. The rest can be taught." Isabella stared at the salary line. Triple what she'd been making. With health insurance. Retirement contributions. Paid vacation. This is too much. It's what the position pays. You want the job or not? She took the job. Within a month, Isabella proved she was worth every penny. Organized. Detail-oriented. Good with people. She streamlined the restaurant supply chain, renegotiated vendor contracts, and caught accounting errors that had been costing thousands annually. "Your mother's good at this," Dominic told Luna one afternoon when the little girl visited the restaurant after school. "Really good." Luna beamed with pride. "Mommy's smart. She helps me with homework even when she's tired." Smart people recognize other smart people. He handed her a cookie from behind the counter. "How's school?" "Better. I'm not scared anymore." Luna took a bite, chocolate chips smearing across her face. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm doing really good in reading. I'm on chapter books now." "That's excellent. Do you read chapter books?" "Sometimes. When I have time." Luna considered this. "You should read more. Reading's important. Mommy says people who read are never alone because they have all the stories in their heads. Dominic smiled, that rare, genuine expression that his employees almost never saw. Your mother's very wise. I know. Luna finished her cookie, then looked at him seriously. Mr. Russo? Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you a bad man? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Marco, who was wiping down tables nearby, froze. Sal, who was reviewing receipts at a corner booth, looked up sharply. Dominic knelt down to Luna's level, the way he had that first night when she'd offered him $5. That's a complicated question, Luna. What do you think? I think. Luna tilted her head, considering. I think bad men don't save people. They hurt people. You saved Mommy. You saved those other ladies too. So maybe you do bad things sometimes, but you're not a bad man. Some people would disagree with that assessment. Some people are wrong. Luna said it with the absolute certainty of childhood. Thank you for saving my mommy. And for the apartment. And for giving her a job. And for the cookies. She hugged him. Just wrapped her small arms around his neck and squeezed. Dominic, who'd killed 17 men 2 weeks ago, who ran an empire built on violence and fear, who made hardened criminals nervous, carefully hugged her back. You're welcome, kid. 6 months passed. Luna's 8th birthday came with a party at the new apartment. Streamers, cake, actual friends from her new school who didn't live in apartments with broken stairs and drug deals in the hallways. Dominic showed up with a wrapped present. The American Girl doll Luna had been saving for, plus an entire wardrobe of accessories. This is too much, Isabella protested quietly while Luna tore into the wrapping paper. It's a birthday present. Let her have this. Luna's scream of joy when she saw the doll was worth every penny. She immediately named it Maria, after Dominic's sister, though she didn't know that, and spent the entire party showing it to anyone who'd look. You're good with her, Isabella observed, watching Dominic help Luna set up the doll's miniature furniture. Natural. I had a sister once. She'd be about your age now if... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I'm sorry. Don't be. What happened to Maria is why I have rules. Why I built my operation the way I did. Why your daughter's bravery mattered so much. He looked at Isabella directly. She reminded me what I'm protecting. Made it personal again instead of just business. Is that why you've been checking on us? Coming by the restaurant when you know Luna's there? Maybe. Or maybe I just like seeing proof that sometimes things work out. They worked out better than Dominic had expected. Isabella thrived in her new position, eventually being promoted to Chief Operations Officer for his legitimate holdings. Luna excelled in school, made friends, joined the drama club and started talking about becoming an actress or a lawyer or maybe both. The other 4 women rescued that night found their paths too. Dominic set all of them up with housing, therapy, job placement assistance. 2 stayed in New York. 2 moved away to start fresh. All of them slowly, painfully, began rebuilding lives that had been shattered. But the criminal world doesn't forget. Especially when you've wiped out an entire operation and sent a message that challenges established power structures. 10 months after Luna's rescue, 3 men came looking for Dominic. Not Kozlov remnants, those had all been dealt with. These were from the Albanian side. The traffickers who'd been expecting their shipment of 5 women and instead got news that their supplier was dead and their pipeline was cut. They tried to hit Dominic at the restaurant. Walked in during lunch rush with concealed weapons and arrogance, thinking surprise would give them the edge. They were wrong. Dominic's security detail had been waiting for exactly this kind of stupidity. The 3 men were disarmed, dragged to the back room, and given a very clear message. The women you are buying aren't merchandise. They're people. They're under protection. You come looking again, you won't leave breathing. The Albanians left. Whether they learned the lesson remained to be seen. We're going to have ongoing problems, Sal said after they'd been escorted out. Trafficking's profitable. People don't just walk away from that kind of money. Then we keep sending the message until it sticks. Dominic cleaned his hands with a towel, blood from one of the Albanians' broken nose staining the white cloth red. Every operation that tries to move through our territory gets shut down. Every buyer who shows up gets educated. Eventually, word spreads that New York's not worth the risk. That's a long game, boss. I'm patient. He had to be. Because 3 days later, another attempt was made. This time not against Dominic, but against one of the rescued women. Sophia, the youngest of the 5, who'd been walking to her new job at a bakery when a van tried to grab her off the street. Tried being the operative word. Dominic's security spotted it coming. Intercepted. 3 more bodies to dispose of. They're probing, Sal analyzed. Testing if your protection extends beyond just Alvarez. Seeing if you're serious about all the victims or just the one who hired you. Then we need to make it clear. My protection extends to all of them. Permanently. Dominic made a series of calls. By evening, all 4 of the other rescued women had dedicated security details. Anyone comes after them, it's treated as a direct attack on my operation. This wasn't business anymore. This was principle. And Dominic's empire was built on principles that he enforced without mercy. The attempt stopped after the 4th body turned up with a very specific message carved into the chest: touch them and die. Word spread through the trafficking networks. Dominic Russo's territory was closed. The 5 women from the Kozlov rescue were untouchable. Anyone stupid enough to challenge this would be made an example of. Most people were smart enough not to test it. But there's always someone dumber than average. Have you ever witnessed a moment that restored your faith in humanity? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. 15 months after the rescue, Luna turned 9. Bigger now. More confident. The fear that had haunted her eyes that first night was gone, replaced by the bright curiosity of a child who felt safe enough to explore the world. She still visited Dominic's restaurant every week after school. Still asked him impossible questions while eating cookies. Still treated him like some combination of uncle and superhero. Mr. Russo, she said one afternoon, I learned about the justice system in social studies today. Yeah. What did you learn? That police are supposed to protect people. That courts are supposed to be fair. That bad guys go to jail. She looked at him with those perceptive brown eyes. But that's not really how it works, is it? Dominic set down the receipt he'd been reviewing. What makes you say that? Because if it worked like that, Mommy wouldn't have needed to pay you to save her. The police would have done it for free. That's their job. Luna's expression was thoughtful, processing concepts too complex for a 9-year-old. But Mommy said we couldn't call the police. She said they wouldn't help. So something's broken in the system, right? Something's broken, Dominic agreed carefully. The system works for some people. Not for everyone. For rich people? Usually. That's not fair. No, it's not. Luna absorbed this, her child's sense of justice wrestling with adult realities. So you fix what the system doesn't fix? That's why you do what you do. It's more complicated than that, Luna. I'm not a hero. I do bad things for what I believe are good reasons. But that doesn't make the bad things less bad. I don't understand. Good. You shouldn't have to. Dominic handed her another cookie. Keep believing in fairness and justice and doing the right thing. Don't let my world make you cynical. But Luna was already too smart for comfortable lies. Mommy says you saved 5 ladies that night. Not just her. She says you gave them all apartments and jobs and therapy. That sounds like hero stuff to me. Heroes don't kill 17 people in one night. Maybe they do if those people were going to hurt others. Luna said it so matter-of-factly, like she was discussing weather instead of mortality. Mrs. Patterson says sometimes good people have to do hard things to protect others. Like soldiers in wars. I'm not a soldier, kid. But you protect people. That's what soldiers do. So maybe you're like a soldier, just without a uniform. She finished her cookie, brushed crumbs off her school uniform. I'm glad you were there when I needed help. Even if you think you're bad, I think you're good. Dominic looked at this child who'd grown from a terrified 7-year-old into a perceptive 9-year-old, who'd survived trauma and came out believing in goodness. You're going to be something special when you grow up, Luna Alvarez. I'm already special. Mommy tells me every day. Luna grinned. But I'm going to be a lawyer when I'm big. A really good one who helps people like you helped us. People who don't have $5 but need help anyway. The world could use more lawyers like that. Then I'll be the first one. As Luna left with Isabella that evening, Dominic found himself thinking about legacy. About what remained after the violence and empire building ended. About whether anything he'd done would matter in the long run. That night, another threat emerged. Not external this time, but internal. One of Dominic's lieutenants, a man named Vincent who'd been with the organization for 8 years, came to him with a proposal. The women. The ones from the Kozlov thing. They're costing us resources. Security, housing, medical expenses. And for what? They're not earning. Not contributing. Just draining money. Dominic's expression went cold. Continue. Vincent, oblivious to the danger he'd just walked into, pressed forward. I'm saying maybe it's time to cut them loose. We made our point. Sent our message. But keeping them on permanent protection? That's not sustainable. We could be using those resources for actual operations. Actual operations. Dominic's voice was flat. Like what? Like expanding into Atlantic City. Or taking over the Garcia family's territory now that they're weak. Real growth. Real profits. Vincent leaned forward, warming to his pitch. Look, boss, I get why you did the rescue. Luna's a cute kid. Her mom needed help. You made it happen. That's done. But you're running a business, not a charity. Time to refocus on what actually makes money. The room went silent. Every other person present suddenly found reasons to be somewhere else. Even Sal, usually unflappable, looked nervous. Vincent, Dominic said quietly. How long have you worked for me? 8 years, boss. You know that. 8 years. And in all that time, what have I always said about the rules? That they're important, but... No, but... What are the rules? Vincent swallowed. No kids. No trafficking. No families unless they're in the game. And yet you just suggested I abandon 5 trafficking victims, including the mother of a 9-year-old girl, because they're costing me money. Dominic stood slowly. Tell me, Vincent, do you think I built this empire to accumulate wealth? To expand territory? To maximize profits? Yes. Wrong. Dominic walked around the desk. I built this empire to create the world I wanted to live in. A world where people like Luna don't have to walk up to strangers with $5 because nobody else will help. A world where women like Isabella and Sophia and the others are protected, not used. Money's just a tool. Territory's just geography. What matters is the principles behind it all. Vincent backed up a step. Boss, I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said. You see those women as expenses instead of people. As problems instead of responsibilities. Dominic's hand landed on Vincent's shoulder. That makes you exactly like the Kozlovs. Maybe worse, because you had 8 years to understand what we stand for and you still don't get it. I'm sorry You're out. Collect your severance from accounting. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't try to join another organization in this city because I'll make sure everyone knows you failed to understand basic human decency. Dominic's grip tightened. You're lucky I'm feeling generous today. Otherwise, you'd be swimming with the Kozlov remnants. Vincent fled. The rest of the organization got the message. The 5 women weren't expenses to be cut. They were living proof of what the empire stood for. Touch them, suggest abandoning them, treat them as anything less than permanent fixtures, and you'd answer to Dominic personally. After Vincent left, Sal approached cautiously. Boss, he wasn't entirely wrong about the costs. I don't care about the costs. I know. But the organization's watching. They're wondering if you've gone soft. If Luna and Isabella have changed you. Sal held up his hands quickly. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying it's noticeable. People are talking. Let them talk. Dominic returned to his desk. Anyone who thinks protecting trafficking victims makes me soft is welcome to test that theory. We'll see how soft I am when I'm breaking their legs. Sal grinned. That's the boss I know. I haven't changed, Sal. I'm still the same person who built this empire on blood and fear. Dominic paused, thinking about Luna asking if he was a bad man. I'm just making sure the blood and fear serve a purpose beyond profit. That's all. Whatever you say, boss. But for what it's worth, I think Luna's right. You're one of the good guys. You just have a really unconventional way of showing it. 3 years passed. Luna turned 12. Middle school. Honors classes. Drama club performances where she played everything from trees to lead roles. Isabella had been promoted twice more, now running most of Dominic's legitimate business empire with the efficiency of someone who'd found her calling. The 5 rescued women had all found their footing. Sophia opened a bakery with a small business loan Dominic co-signed. Maria, the catatonic one, had recovered enough to go back to school, was now studying social work. The other 2 had moved to different cities but sent Christmas cards every year, always with the same message, "Thank you for giving us our lives back." The trafficking attempts had stopped. Word had spread far enough that New York was closed territory. Occasionally some newcomer would try to test boundaries, but Dominic's reputation preceded him. One warning was usually enough. Luna still visited the restaurant every week. Still asked impossible questions. But now they were more sophisticated. "Mr. Russo," she said one afternoon, "I've been thinking about what you said. About doing bad things for good reasons." "Yeah. I get it now. Like, morally it's complicated. You hurt people who hurt others. That's vigilante justice. It's illegal but not necessarily wrong." She was eating tiramisu this time, having graduated from cookies. "But here's my question. What happens when you're gone? Who keeps protecting people then?" It was the question Dominic had been avoiding for years. "I have people. The organization continues. But will they follow your rules? Or will they go back to being just criminals without the—" Luna searched for the word. "Without the purpose." Smart kid. Too smart. That's why rules get written down. Enforced. Made permanent. But rules only work if people believe in them. You believe in them because of your sister. Because you know what happens when people aren't protected. But the guys who work for you, do they believe? Or do they just follow orders because you're scary? Dominic set down his espresso. Where's this coming from? School. We're studying leadership in history class. How some leaders inspire and others just intimidate. How the inspired ones build things that last. The intimidating ones build things that collapse when they're gone. Luna looked at him seriously. I want what you built to last. Because if it doesn't, then people like Mommy and me, people who don't have protection, will be vulnerable again. You'll never be vulnerable. I've made arrangements. I don't mean just us. I mean everyone. All the people in your territory who are safe because you made rules. What happens to them when you're not here to enforce those rules anymore? It was a fair question. One that kept Dominic up at night more often than he'd admit. I'm training people, he said finally. Making sure the next generation understands why the rules matter. Not just what they are, but why they exist. Sal's been learning. Marco too. Others who've proven they get it. Good. Luna finished her tiramisu. Because you changed things, Mr. Russo. Made them better. It'd be sad if that all fell apart because you didn't plan for the future. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice. She grinned. Plus, I watch a lot of history documentaries. They're very educational. That conversation stuck with Dominic. Over the next months, he restructured his organization. Put the rules in writing. Created a council of his most trusted people to ensure decisions aligned with core principles. Made succession plans that emphasized ideology over just power. He promoted Sal to second-in-command with explicit instructions. The rules weren't suggestions. They were foundations. Anyone who violated them got removed. No exceptions. You're really doing this, Sal observed. Making sure it all continues after you. Luna made me realize I've been building for today instead of tomorrow. That needs to change. Kids got you wrapped around her finger. Kids got sense. There's a difference. But fate has a way of testing resolve. When Luna was 13, a new threat emerged. Not from trafficking networks or rival organizations. From within. A young lieutenant named Carlo, ambitious, smart, utterly lacking in principles, began pushing for the organization to expand into more profitable ventures. Specifically, prostitution and drug distribution. The profits are enormous, Carlo argued during a council meeting. We're leaving money on the table by not taking advantage. We don't do prostitution, Dominic said flatly. Ever. That's not negotiable. But boss, if we control it, we can make it safer. Better conditions for the workers. Medical care. Protection. Or we cannot participate in exploiting women for profit. That's also an option. Carlo persisted. What about drugs? High-end clientele. Quality product. We're already moving everything else. Why not this? Because drugs destroy communities. Turn people into addicts who'll do anything for their next fix. Create cycles of poverty and violence. Dominic leaned forward. This organization was built on specific principles. We protect people. We don't prey on them. You want to make money exploiting addiction and desperation, do it somewhere else. With all due respect, boss, those principles are costing us. Get out. What? Get out of this meeting. Get out of my organization. Get out of my territory. You have 24 hours. Dominic's voice was ice. You just proved you don't understand what we stand for. That makes you a liability. Carlo left. And because he was young and stupid and thought he was smarter than everyone else, he didn't just leave. He went to the Morettis, a rival family, and told them everything. Organization structure. Security protocols. Dominic's routines. The Morettis, seeing an opportunity, planned a hit. Not just on Dominic, but on his entire leadership structure. Take them all out in one move, absorb the territory, eliminate the competition. They set it up perfectly. Invitation to a meeting with a neutral intermediary. Guaranteed safety. Traditional protocols. Everything designed to make Dominic and his council feel secure. It was a trap. One that would have worked, except Luna, now 13 and frighteningly perceptive, noticed something wrong. She'd been at the restaurant when Carlo stopped by to collect his things. Heard him on the phone. Caught the words Moretti, and meeting, and tomorrow night. And because she'd spent 6 years watching how Dominic's world worked, she understood immediately what was happening. Luna called Dominic directly. Mr. Russo? It's Luna. Don't go to that meeting tomorrow. Carlo told the Morettis about it. It's a trap. Dominic, who'd been reviewing the meeting details, froze. How do you know this? I heard him on the phone. He said, Moretti meeting tomorrow, they're all coming, perfect opportunity. Then he said something about payment and new territory. Her voice was urgent. You can't go. They're going to kill you. Luna. I'm serious. I know what I heard. She was near tears now, the 13-year-old girl showing through the adult observations. Please. Don't go. Or if you have to go, bring everyone. Bring weapons. Bring whatever you need. But don't trust them. Dominic believed her. Not just because she was smart, but because her instincts had been right before. Okay. I won't go. Or rather, I'll send a proxy and see what happens. Be careful. Always am, kid. Thank you. The meeting happened as scheduled. Dominic sent a decoy, one of his men who looked similar enough from a distance. When the shooting started, when the Moretti ambush revealed itself, Dominic's counter-ambush was already in position. 14 Moretti soldiers died that night. The family's leadership was decimated. Carlo, who'd shown up to collect his reward, was found 3 days later in the Hudson River. And Dominic went to Luna's house the next day with a gift. If stories about courage, redemption, and unexpected heroism move you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. You saved my life, Dominic said, standing in Isabella and Luna's living room. Again. Luna, wearing a hoodie and jeans, looked smaller than her 13 years. I just told you what I heard. You connected dots, understood implications, warned me in time to prepare. He held out a small box. This is for you. Inside was a necklace. Simple. Silver. With a pendant shaped like a shield. It's pretty, Luna said softly. It's more than pretty. It's a reminder that you're under protection. Always. Anyone sees this, they'll know you're connected to me. That hurting you means answering to me. Dominic helped her fasten it around her neck. But it's also a reminder that protection goes both ways. You've saved me twice now. First by reminding me what I'm fighting for. Second by keeping me alive when I was walking into a trap. Luna touched the pendant. I don't want you to die, Mr. Russo. You're important. Important. He smiled slightly. I'm a criminal, Luna. The world would probably be better off without me. No, it wouldn't. She said it with absolute certainty. Because without you, those 5 ladies would be dead or worse. Mommy would be gone. All the people you protect would be vulnerable. And yeah, you do bad things. But you do them to stop worse things. That matters. Isabella, standing in the kitchen doorway, wiped her eyes. She's right. You've given us everything, Dominic. Safety. Stability. A future. We'd be nothing without you. You'd have been fine. We'd have been dead, Isabella interrupted. Don't diminish what you did. What you continue to do. She came closer. Do you know what Luna does with her allowance now? Dominic shook his head. She saves $5 every month. Puts it in a special envelope marked Emergency Help Fund. Says that if she ever meets someone desperate like she was, she wants to be able to help them the way you helped us. Isabella's voice cracked. My daughter learned generosity from a Mafia boss. How's that for irony? The $5. It always came back to the $5. Speaking of which, Dominic pulled out his wallet, extracted a worn bill, and handed it to Luna. This is one of the original 5 you gave me. I kept it. Reminder of what changed everything. Luna stared at the crumpled dollar bill. You saved it. Every time I think about expanding into prostitution or drugs or any of the other profitable ventures people suggest, I look at this. Remember a 7-year-old offering me everything she had. Remember that some things matter more than profit. He pressed it into her hand. Keep it. Pass it on someday to someone who needs to understand that money's value isn't in its amount, but in what it represents. Hope. Courage. Faith that someone will help. Luna carefully folded the dollar, placed it in her pocket. I'll keep it safe. Years continued passing. Luna graduated high school with honors. Got accepted to Columbia Law School on a full scholarship. Dominated her classes with the same fierce intelligence she'd shown at 7 years old. Isabella retired from managing Dominic's businesses, though she stayed on as a consultant. Used her savings to open a non-profit, Second Chances, helping women escape trafficking and rebuild their lives. The 5 original women became board members. Sophia's bakery was thriving. Maria finished her social work degree and started counseling other survivors. The other 2 sent money every year to help fund the non-profit's operations. Dominic's organization continued following his rules. Not perfectly, people were people, but consistently enough that his territory became known as the safest in New York. Not because crime didn't happen, but because certain crimes were absolutely forbidden and ruthlessly punished. He got older. Slower. Started thinking about actual retirement instead of just theoretical succession planning. Luna graduated law school. Passed the bar. Started working as a public defender, representing people who couldn't afford lawyers. People like her mother would have been if she'd survived that kidnapping. On Luna's 25th birthday, she visited Dominic at the restaurant, the same one where she'd first been brought, terrified and alone, 18 years earlier. I'm quitting the public defender's office, she announced. Dominic looked up from his espresso. Why? You're good at it. I am. But I want to do something bigger. Luna pulled out a business plan, spread it across the table. I'm starting my own firm. Pro bono work exclusively. Representing victims of trafficking, exploitation, abuse. People who slip through the cracks in the justice system. That's ambitious. I learned from the best. She grinned. Will you be my first investor? How much do you need? 200,000. Enough for office space, staff salaries for the first year, operational expenses. Luna looked at him seriously. I'm not asking for charity. This is a loan. I'll pay you back. Consider it an investment. But Luna. Dominic leaned forward. Why now? Because 18 years ago, a 7-year-old had to walk up to a mafia boss with $5 because nobody else would help. That shouldn't have been necessary. The system should have protected her. Saved her mother. Made her feel safe going to the police. Luna's voice was passionate. I can't fix the whole system. But I can help. One person at a time. The way you helped us. Dominic wrote the check. Watched her build the firm. Watched her win cases that seemed impossible. Watched her become exactly what she'd promised at 9 years old. A lawyer who helped people who had nothing. The firm's logo was a shield. Same shape as the necklace she still wore. On the 10-year anniversary of the firm's founding, Luna started a tradition. Every year, she'd choose one case, usually a child in desperate need, and she'd tell their story in her office newsletter. At the end, she'd attach a crisp $5 bill and a note, for the next person who needs help. Because sometimes $5 changes everything. Recipients would use the $5 however they needed. Some bought food. Some kept it as a reminder that help existed. Some passed it on to others. The tradition spread. Other lawyers adopted it. Other organizations. The $5 bill became a symbol of hope in communities where hope was rare. Dominic, now 70 years old and officially retired, watched all this unfold from his restaurant table where he still had coffee every morning. You did good, boss, Sal said one afternoon, visiting his old friend. That kid you saved? She's changing the world. I didn't save her, Dominic corrected. She saved herself. She saved me. All I did was remove obstacles. Still, you gave her the chance. She gave me the reason. Dominic looked at the framed $5 bill on the restaurant wall, Luna's original payment, protected under glass with a plaque. This is what changed everything. Funny how life works. You build an empire thinking it's about power and control. Then a 7-year-old shows up and teaches you it was always about something else entirely. What was it about? Protection. Purpose. Making sure people who need help can find it, even if they only have $5 and nowhere else to turn. Dominic died peacefully 5 years later. Massive funeral. Half the city attended, both the criminal underworld and the legitimate community. Luna gave the eulogy. People will tell you, she began, that Dominic Russo was a criminal. A mafia boss. A dangerous man who built his empire on violence. They're not wrong. He was all those things. She paused, composed herself. But he was also the man who saved my mother. Who rescued 5 women from trafficking. Who protected thousands of people over decades because he believed some lines should never be crossed. Who taught me that power without purpose is just cruelty, but power with principles can change lives. She held up a $5 bill. When I was 7, I offered him this. Everything I had. He took it seriously. Treated it like it mattered. And in doing so, he showed me that every person matters. Every life has value. Every desperate plea for help deserves a response. Dominic Russo was complicated, violent, flawed. But he was also the reason I'm standing here today. The reason my mother is alive. The reason hundreds of women who would have been trafficked are free. The reason certain neighborhoods in New York are safer than they have any right to be. So yes, he was a criminal. But he was also a protector. A man with rules in a world without them. Someone who proved that even in darkness, you can choose to be a light. She placed the $5 bill on his casket. Thank you, Mr. Russo. For everything. For saving my mother. For believing a child's $5 mattered. for teaching me that changing the world starts with helping one person at a time. Dominic Rousseau was buried with honor. His organization continued operating under his rules. Luna's firm continued growing. And somewhere in New York, a child in desperate need found help because Luna had taught them that courage and $5 could change everything. The legacy of a little girl's bravery and a mafia boss's redemption lived on. Not in territory or wealth or power, but in the lives saved. The hope restored. The proof that sometimes the most dangerous person in the neighborhood is exactly who you need. Because Luna had been right all those years ago. Dominic Rousseau wasn't a bad man. He did bad things. But in the end, what mattered wasn't the violence or the empire or the fear he inspired. What mattered was the 7-year-old who offered him $5 and reminded him why any of it existed in the first place. To protect people. To create safe spaces in an unsafe world. To prove that when the system fails, humanity doesn't have to. 20 years after Dominic's death, Luna, now in her 50s and one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the country, still carried that original $5 bill. Wore the shield necklace. Told the story to anyone who'd listen. My mother was kidnapped by traffickers, she'd begin. I was 7 years old. Alone. Terrified. And I did the only thing I could think of. I found the most dangerous man in the neighborhood and asked for help. The story always got attention. Always inspired questions. Always led to the same conclusion. Sometimes courage looks like a child walking up to a monster and believing they'll choose to be human instead. Luna's firm had helped thousands of people over the decades. Won impossible cases. Changed legislation. Created pathways for victims to become survivors, survivors to become advocates, advocates to become forces for change. And every single case started the same way. With someone desperate. Someone afraid. Someone who needed help and had nowhere else to turn. Just like Luna at 7 years old, clutching 5 crumpled dollars and praying a monster would have mercy. The $5 tradition continued spreading. Became a movement. Hashtag $5 of hope trended on social media. People shared stories of times they helped someone with almost nothing. Times someone helped them when they had almost nothing. The original bill, the one Luna had given Dominic that night outside the restaurant, was eventually donated to a museum exhibit on criminal justice reform. Protected under glass. Accompanied by photos. 7-year-old Luna. Dominic at his restaurant. Isabella reunited with her daughter. The 5 rescued women at the ribbon cutting for Second Chances. The exhibit's title, When the System Fails, Humanity Doesn't Have to. It drew millions of visitors. Sparked conversations. Changed minds. Proved that sometimes the most important stories aren't about heroes and villains, but about complicated people making difficult choices in impossible circumstances. Luna gave her final speech at age 72, retiring from active legal practice but not from advocacy. Standing at a podium in front of law students, she held up a new $5 bill. This, she said, represents everything I've learned in 65 years. When I was 7, I offered this amount to a mafia boss because I believed he could help. I had no reason to trust him. Every reason to be terrified. But I did it anyway because my mother's life depended on it. She looked at the young faces staring up at her. Future lawyers. Future judges. Future people with power to help or hurt. You're going to face impossible situations, Luna continued. Cases you can't win. Clients who can't pay. Systems designed to fail the people who need them most. And you're going to have to decide what matters more. Following rules that don't work, or breaking them to help people who need it. I'm not telling you to become criminals. Dominic Rousseau's path isn't one I recommend. But I am telling you to remember why you wanted to become lawyers in the first place. To help people. To create justice where systems fail. To be the person someone desperate can turn to when they have nothing left but hope and $5. She placed the bill on the podium. This is for one of you. Whoever needs it most. Keep it. Remember what it represents. And when you're successful, when you've built your career and helped countless people, pass it on. Teach someone else that courage and compassion matter more than power and profit. Because 18 years ago, no, 65 years ago, a 7-year-old girl proved that sometimes the smallest gesture creates the biggest change. $5 saved 5 women. 5 women inspired a non-profit. A non-profit helped thousands. Thousands inspired a movement. A movement changed laws. Laws protected millions. All because one child refused to accept that nobody cared. That nobody would help. That $5 wasn't enough to matter. Luna smiled, that same bright expression she'd had as a little girl eating spaghetti in Dominic's restaurant. It was enough. It's always enough. The question is whether we're brave enough to offer what we have, and whether others are human enough to accept it. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Students swarmed her afterward. Everyone wanted to shake her hand. Hear more of the story. Understand how a 7-year-old's courage had rippled forward into decades of change. And somewhere in New York, in the same neighborhood where it all began, a child facing impossible circumstances heard Luna's story. Learned that help existed. Discovered that courage mattered. Found the strength to ask for help when help seemed impossible. The cycle continued. Would continue. Had to continue. Because that's what Luna and Dominic had built together, neither fully understanding what they were creating in that moment outside a restaurant when a crying child offered everything she had to save her mother. They'd built proof that humanity persists. That compassion exists even in darkness. That sometimes the monsters we fear are the angels we need, if only we're brave enough to ask and they're wise enough to answer. Luna died peacefully at 87, surrounded by family. Hundreds attended her funeral. Thousands more watched online. Her eulogy was given by a young woman, once a trafficking victim, now a federal prosecutor, who'd been helped by Luna's firm 20 years earlier. She taught me, the woman said through tears, that being saved isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Luna was saved by Dominic Russo. Then she spent her entire life saving others, teaching them to save others, creating a chain of compassion that stretched across generations. At Luna's grave, people left $5 bills. Dozens of them. Each one with a note. Thank you for teaching us courage. You changed my life. Because of your story, I helped someone today. The bills were collected by Luna's foundation, still running, still helping, still proving that small gestures matter, and used to help the next person in crisis. The next child alone and afraid. The next mother who needed rescue. The next desperate soul who'd run out of options but not hope. And in a glass case in the foundation's headquarters, protected and preserved, sat the original $5. Crumpled. Worn. Priceless. Beneath it, a plaque read, "This is what changed everything." May we all have Luna's courage and Dominic's humanity when it matters most. The story of a little girl, a Mafia boss, and $5 became legend. Then history. Then something more important than either, a reminder that in a world that often feels broken beyond repair, sometimes all it takes to fix it is someone brave enough to ask for help and someone powerful enough to give it. Not because systems worked. Not because justice prevailed. But because 2 imperfect people, one a terrified child, one a violent criminal, chose humanity in a moment when they could have chosen otherwise. And that choice echoed forward through time, touching lives neither would ever meet, creating ripples neither could have imagined, proving what Luna had known at 7 years old and never forgot. Everyone matters. Every life has value. Every cry for help deserves an answer. Even if all you have to offer is $5 and hope.